today we brought Micah out here to talk about leading the younger generations, and now we're going to talk about the older generations.
She called me the greatest generation earlier
As
today,
a
like
joke.
I fought in World War II, but yeah.
But the truth is, we started the day with Micah's perspective of, young in her career.
Yeah.
And we're going to end the day with this micro interview with one of my dear friends, Sarah Armstrong, who is now retired and gets to tell us what it's like at the other end of this story. And just as a little way of introduction to Sarah, she's been a part of our Echelon Front community and family for a long time. She was an early adopter of the principles, read the book, and she was just a massive supporter to us. And in the last couple years, as our things have grown and changed, she has been a fixture in our online training, in all the different things that we do, the musters and now the Women's Assembly. And she has a nickname. We always say, Sarah knows. And that's the nickname, because if we're saying something or we're giving some insight, Sarah knows. She knows. She's got the perspective. So it's awesome to have her here today. And then just a fun little tidbit. The first time that I ever spoke, which was at our muster in Australia, I was terrified. It was outside of my comfort zone. And Sarah was the one that I called and said, hey, can I just hop on a Zoom call and walk through my brief with you? And she was so kind, because that brief was awful. And it was. She's being nice. But she gave me some wonderful feedback, and she's always been a massive supporter, and I'm just really excited to have her today and to share her story. So, Sarah.
Jamie.
Yes.
So glad to be
Tell
here.
us about you.
Absolutely. Couple of things. Sarah knows because she's been around a long time. It's a very generous thing for people to say. But after you've worked for close to 35 years, there's pattern recognition. There's leadership skills that you develop. But before we get started, I just wanted to invite everyone to take a moment and think about your ladder. And there's 400 women here. There's at least 400 different ladders. And I want you to think about right now what your ladder looks like and where are you on that journey on your ladder. And is your ladder a step ladder? Is it a step stool? Do you have multiple ladders going on? And regardless of whether you are a sole entrepreneur, starting your own business, a stay-at-home mom, or maybe you work for a gigantic global corporation, which I know some of the attendees here work for very large companies. And right now, think about your personal ladder. Is your ladder leaning on the building you want it to be leaning on? Where are you? Who's holding your ladder for you? Who's helping you up the ladder? So just keep those things in mind as we spend the next few minutes together talking about climbing the corporate ladder. And I'll discuss my personal experience, and hopefully you'll have some takeaways that you can apply to your own life.
Yeah, and I think that's where we should start. For the audience to understand your perspective, like what has your climb, if we're using this ladder analogy, what has your climb looked like in your career?
On paper, it looks very tidy. Started as a staff accountant, so I'm a licensed CPA to this day. Spent 33 years in corporate finance. On paper, staff accountant, climbed the corporate ranks, CFO, retired, going through looking for board assignments next, which on paper looks like it's very smooth and linear, when the reality is it's really more like Ninja Warrior. You just hope to get to the end, and you're vertical and you're not soaking wet, And so what it really looks like is, so I started work before the internet. I started work before email existed.
I told you.
Right? I started work when you did not wear pants, ladies. Skirts only, right? I see a hand right here, right? No pants, pantyhose every day, right? So climbing the corporate ladder, was super happy to be invited onto the ladder, right? That was kind of a new thing, to be in the corporate ranks, right? Started the climb, got married, had a baby, okay? You take a little pause on the ladder. Kept climbing, had another baby. Kept climbing, my husband was diagnosed with cancer when we were 28. Okay, whoa, phew, that's like a trampoline, right? And then bounce back up. Okay, now it's the monkey bars, right? And we're just
the ladder that you're climbing across.
Yes, it just evolves. It's you're constantly assessing and deciding what is going to work best for your family, for yourself, for your career. And I love the fact that women are thinking about their health more. I know we're going to talk in other sessions about taking care of yourself physically. There was a point at which I was grinding my teeth so hard while sleeping that I had to go see a specialist for a device. Like, we did not take care of our health in those years. So this is early 90s through the 2000s. So started off staff accountant, and I think the easiest way to kind of describe my personal career, aside from all the gymnastics you're doing to get from the start to the finish, is to kind of divide it into 3 chunks: the first and the second and the third decade of my career. And the first decade, you are a doer. You're doing the grunt work. You are looking for opportunities. You're trying to develop a network. All the time, maybe you're also trying to raise a family. You're trying to volunteer. For those of you that are taking care of elderly parents, I see you, right? That's really hard. So there's caregivers out there while we're trying to do all these things like develop our own personal career. But the first 10 years, you're a doer. And that's what I was doing. I was climbing the corporate rank. I was doing the grunt work. Maybe by the end of the first decade, I might have been managing a couple of people. By the second decade, you're really moving more into that managerial problem-solving mode. You're identifying problems. You're identifying talent. You're really trying to come up with solutions to problems, challenges for your company, challenges for your people. And then the third decade of your career, you're pretty much compensated for being someone who makes sound decisions. And all of these things are skills that stack on each other. And there's a saying, there's no compression algorithm for experience. And I agree to a large extent, except when it comes to leadership training. That is the one thing that can catapult your career when you're able to take all of these tools and stick them into your little toolbox and know when you see a situation, you can detach and say, okay, my employee's really angry today. And then you say to yourself, let me just detach for a minute, what's going on here? And you say, no, it's fear. My employee's scared about something. And those are the types of skills, when you start really digging into leadership tools, that you can just start reaching into your bag and start applying to different situations. And that's why you look like the Sarah knows thing. It's not because I know anything more than anyone else. It's just I've taken these lessons seriously, I've applied them to my life, and I really see the benefits.
Well, I love that you are an advocate for leadership development, obviously, because Echelon Front, that's what we do.
Yes,
so I love when people recognize the value in investing in your people.
Yeah.
And early in your career, what were some of the things that you did to enable yourself to get higher on that ladder? What were some of the things that you focused on, recognizing, hey, I know where I someday want to be, and maybe that's not a clear picture, but I've got an idea of the direction I want to go, which is up. What were some of the things that you prioritized and focused on that you would recommend for people that are at the start of their career as well?
Keep your promises. That's what it really comes down to. I find that in parenting, and I find it at work. So the reality is, Jamie knows how strongly I feel about the fact that I think being a woman in leadership, it's a competitive advantage. We actually have a competitive advantage being women, because we can tap into all of the skills that we have learned as a daughter, as a wife, as a sister, as a friend, as a mother, as a caregiver. And leading from empathy and really caring about your people, that does not mean that you're a pushover, right? That doesn't mean that you're like the nice lady in the corner. It means that you care enough about your people to be straight with them, to help them, to pick them up when they need it, to give them a gentle push from behind when they're falling down.
Yeah, I love that, keeping your promises. I think one of the things for me early, at least at Echelon Front, is I kind of recognized that I wanted an opportunity to grow. I wanted an opportunity to climb a ladder, especially in an organization that I really believed in, was just performance. I think there's so much value, and we underestimate ourselves in how valuable it is to just be a performer. And part of that is keeping your promises. Part of that is just doing the basics well, showing up on time, doing a good job, and being open and willing to receive feedback, which is always a little difficult for people to receive feedback in those scenarios. How do we receive that feedback and then make changes without it necessarily derailing our effort? Yeah, I mean, what have you seen for that?
I completely agree, and I'll just add, a sense of humor goes a long way too. I've always worked in very male-dominated fields, and I was thinking about being at a conference, and there might have been maybe 50 or 60 people, and I was actually the only woman, and I was fairly young at the time, and luckily a guy that had a good sense of humor, he walked over to me and he goes, "Well, I guess you're Sarah," And I said to him, I go, "Well, what was the first clue," right? So a sense of humor goes a long way for sure. You have to deliver. The keep your promises really does come down to the delivery. And I have a daughter that's 31. She's climbing the corporate ladder right now. And these are the same things that I tell her. And sometimes she'll just say, "Mom, the work is just piling on, and everybody wants everything by Thursday at noon." And I'll say, "Okay, well, have a conversation. Why don't you go to some of them and say, like, is Thursday noon truly the drop deadline? Because that might be what that particular person wants to make their job a little bit easier, but they also know that there's some wiggle room. And so it's okay to have a conversation and advocate for yourself. No one but you will advocate for yourself as much as you should. You own your career. And you go and you just say, you know what, I've got all of these things in the world of prioritize and execute. Can we make this Monday instead at noon? And 99% of the time, the person's going to say, "Oh, that'd be fine." But I find a lot of young people in their career, they just stress themselves out. And that's on the boss, maybe didn't give clear communication about what a real deadline should be. But it's perfectly acceptable to advocate for yourself.
So fun fact, I was fired from one of my first jobs out of college. My first job out of college. I was a flight attendant and I was fired from that job. And what's interesting, and I could give you all the reasons for why this happened. They have a very strict, 3 times you're out rule, you're tardy. And listen, I might have had very valid reasons for why I was late. Even if the plane took off on time, if I checked in a minute late, you're getting a mark. And so one of the things you talked about, hey, keeping your promises, delivering, performance, those things are really important. One of the things I try to teach my children as looking back on my career and some of the mistakes that I made was the value of relationships. And we teach that here at Echelon Front as that's a paramount thing that we have to do. And something I tell my kids all the time is hey, right now you can prioritize building relationships with your teachers because you never know when you're going to need an advocate for you and when you need that additional support. And in this job that I got fired from, the reason I got fired was because despite the fact I had very valid reasons for why I was late, it didn't really matter because I didn't have anyone there to advocate for me. I didn't have any relationships because that work, you're always working with different people. I couldn't even tell you my boss's name. That's a problem. And so I think there's a component around building a relationship and something that you and I have talked a lot about, which is something that we can offer to the people on our teams is mentorship and the value of not just seeking relationships up the chain of command, but how do we mentor the people around us? And I'd love to hear your perspective on mentorship and the value of that.
Very important. But I do want to distinguish, however, between mentorship and sponsorship. Those are 2 different things, related but separate. And it's very important to seek out a mentor early in your career. And the truth is, your mentor, it could be listening to the Jocko podcast. It could be, a mentor. It's best to find a real life person. It's best to find someone, if you want to pursue a long career in a particular industry. Try to find someone in your industry. But a mentor can teach you a lot of things just about being a good employee, maybe not specifically your job. But a sponsor is that person who is going to talk about you and prop you up when you're not in the room. The sponsor is going to be the person that's looking for opportunities. And they're going to be the one that knows that you're good at your job, you're a hard worker, you follow through, you take care of the details, and when an opportunity comes up, they're going to speak your name in that room and say, hey, you know what? Jamie is the right person for this. We don't have to go anywhere else. Jamie's the one. So I think mentorship is very important. Finding a good mentor, really understand what a mentor-mentee relationship looks like. It's not just for you to show up for 30 minutes once every 2 weeks into one of your coworkers' offices and have that person, opine, right? You, as the mentee, you want to come in with tasks, questions. You want to drive that. You want to make it easy for your mentor, which actually makes me think about earlier today. So Micah was talking that she put down something I want to pick up. Hopefully that is the vernacular the kids use.
I think that was
Yeah.
my generation.
Yeah.
I don't think Mike is saying that, but go for it.
Yes. So I loved that she started about, Gen Z and work-life balance and wanting, I want to get a raise, I want more money, and I love that. You have to advocate for yourself. But here's the trick. You have to make it easy for the decision maker to say yes, right? So I was the decision maker. People would come to me and say, Sarah, I want a raise. And I'm not kidding you. The times that the answers, I'm like, oh, okay. My daughter needs braces. I'm like, oh, that's going to be like, okay, let's work on this. Like maybe there's ways we can figure out how to get you an advance on your bonus. Like we're going to figure this out. But if you truly believe that you're adding corporate value, you have increased scope, maybe your salary is in fact out of market with where you live, you should go in, you schedule a meeting, you want to be prepared, you want to come with evidence, and you make it easy for me to say yes. Because if you come into my office and just say, I want a raise, what I'm hearing is, Sarah, I'm giving you a job. I want you to just do this task and figure out how to make it work for me. And I had a boss too. I had people I had to answer to. I had a busy day. So the best advice I would give for the young folks in the room, when you want something, work-life balance, a raise, anything in that kind of genre, make sure you do it from an evidence-based perspective so that when you go and have that conversation, you're making it easy for that person to say yes.
I also think that takes and requires some humility and ownership too. I was in a coaching call with a client and we were talking about this specific thing where she was feeling like, hey, I want more opportunities. I feel like I've been given a ceiling on this ladder and I want more and I deserve it, right? There's a sense of like, I deserve this. Look at all these things. And the way she was approaching that conversation with her leadership was, let me stack up all the things I'm doing to show you why I deserve this. And one of the things that I had her do as an exercise was to spend time really taking that honest self-assessment of actually the things that she recognizes she's not doing well. Because in the midst of all the things that you're doing well that you could show up and say, see, look at this, there's also a bunch of things that she recognized, yeah, I could see where they're hesitant because of this, or I could see that I don't do this very well, and I haven't really done a good job in this area. And how much more compelling is that if you go in to say, hey, I want to advocate for myself, but I also recognize that I need to get better at A, B, and C, and I'm going to be prioritizing these things. One of the tactics I used, and it wasn't for a raise, it wasn't even for a title change. It was just looking for Leif and Jocko to give me some feedback because I had felt, again, like I had hit a little bit of a ceiling of what my job was as director of operations. And I went to Jocko and Leif, and it wasn't even look at the resume of things I've done. It was, hey, I feel like at this point, I am looking for some guidance from you on what more you want to see from me. Where else can I support the mission? I feel like these things are going well. Jen has stepped up in this area. The team is advocating and running with this. What else do you want to see from me? And I got some incredible feedback from Jocko on what else he wanted to see from me. And it was a couple months later that he announced at a muster event the change of title and the promotion to COO and the honor of my life. But it took me coming to him with the earnest and honest, sincere question of, I want your feedback. What can I do better?
And you may find that you have a list of all of these things that you've done, but they don't actually align with the corporate initiatives.
Yes.
So it's like, great, you've done all these fabulous things, but they are not the things that the corporation values at this time. Now, you shouldn't get that far along that you're working on projects or side projects that are misaligned with the corporate mission or the corporate annual initiatives, right? You should be constantly seeking the kind of feedback that would prevent you from kind of getting derailed like that. But that is what I find too, is that sometimes there's just that misalignment of someone thinking, okay, I'm doing all of these things, right? And they may not understand that it really isn't an expansion of scope. It really isn't creating efficiencies. It may actually be causing some friction between sales and finance because they're running off kind of doing these things. So it's great to take initiative. I don't want to bang down any initiative. Keep that up, but make sure that you are touching base with your manager to make sure that it's going to align across the corporation.
Yeah, and I'd love to, for a lot of the women in here who have the ambition to climb the corporate ladder or to climb whatever ladder they're working on. Maybe it's a side hustle, maybe it's you know, an entrepreneurial effort. But if you have that ambition in your career, you had mentioned you have 2 children. What was that like to balance the work and the home? Because I think that's something that we all deal with. And I know for myself, you know, my husband travels every week, and on Mondays when he leaves to go to wherever he's going, he packs a bag and he walks out the door.
Right.
When I came to the assembly, I packed a bag, but before I could walk out the door, I had to organize a dog sitter, and I had to make sure that my boys had rides. It was Spirit Week for homecoming, so I got all their costumes and stuff laid out and situated and made sure their suits were hanging up and ready for the dance and all these other things that my husband never thinks about. And so I definitely think there's a difference, right? There's a difference.
There is a
not
difference.
Bad or not, you know, I don't have to feel resentful towards
Nope.
that, but different. So how did you balance sort of the home life and your career ambitions?
It also doesn't end. My father called me, I'm an elderly father, as I'm walking back, he calls me, he's like, "Where's the manual to the flashlight?" I'm like, "Okay, I'll get back to you in like 30 minutes, right? So it never ends for us, and that's because we care, right? We care about our family being safe and secure and all those things. So, you know, I definitely, my career started and right before my children were born. I was able to take a little bit of time, handful of months off when they were each born. Never had any help, never had a housekeeper, never did all of those things. If you're able to do it, do it. I think it was a little bit of ego of like, well, I don't need help. I don't need help. I'm Gen X. We don't need help. Like we take care of everything. It's all on lockdown. There will be no problems, right? And in retrospect, I definitely did myself a disservice. I do remember when my kids got to maybe high school age, when it was sports, and it was just like laundry and laundry and laundry. And
Endless laundry. Oh my gosh.
Endless and smelly. And I remember just saying like, I suck at this. Like I'm so bad at laundry. And you know what? I wasn't. I was really, really bad at the last 10%.
Yeah.
I was good at the first 90. I could get everything washed and it would be in baskets, and then I'd just have baskets everywhere. And then the kids would come and they'd grab things out of the basket, and then you're like, is it dirty? Is it clean? And now everything's
This is my life now.
But you know what? It was only the last 10%.
Yeah.
So I did like a root cause analysis. I'm like, what is going wrong in this household? Who is in charge here? Oh, it's me.
You can tell she's in finance.
Yep. And so I called her my laundry fairy. I hired a local girl from a local college, and she came on Mondays and Fridays for 2 hours, and I would just leave her money, and she would fold laundry and put it away.
Oh my gosh.
And that's all it took. That's all it took.
Yeah.
And I was beating myself up for not being a good homemaker. I was beating myself up for not providing every single homemade meal or being at every single possible event. And I do believe we can do it all, but maybe not all at the same time, right? There's seasons for things in your life. There's a season when you're working really hard. There's maybe a season you can take a rest. There's a season when you can volunteer. And hopefully you get to a point where you're able to stack up some of those things so that you're living the life that you want on your own terms.
I love that.
Yeah.
And as we wrap, when we were prepping for this, we had a really cool conversation to talk about your daughter. And I just want to share, you know, I was very lucky. My mom also worked full time. Yeah. And, you know, I'm always envious of the women who stay home with their kids. I think that's harder for sure.
100%.
Yes. And I'm
100%.
so impressed.
Yep.
And I was lucky to grow up and see my mom really care and be passionate about her work and really care about the work that she was doing. And it was always a really good example to me, and it made me want to go and do something in the world that had that kind of impact. And it was fun talking with you about some conversations you had with your own daughter leading into this session, and I'd love if you could share that story of that conversation.
Sure, but first, the work that your mother did, the work that my mother did. My mother was elected to county sheriff when she was the 6th woman in the history of the United States to be elected sheriff. So
Heck yeah.
props to your mom.
Yeah.
Props to all those moms out there that made I was able to get my foot on the corporate ladder. So props to those women that came before us. So I did. My daughter's 31. She's climbing the corporate ladder. She's in that first decade right now. And she and her girlfriend were over, a bunch of her girlfriends were over, and we were all chatting. They're all climbing the corporate ladder. And I said, if you had an opportunity to ask me a question, just one-on-one, what would you ask? And my daughter looks up and she's, regarding climbing the corporate ladder, she goes, I just want to know if it's worth it. And I said, now that's the question. That's the right question for all the women here in the room. A lot of you are probably thinking, is this worth it? I just don't know. And I said to her and her friends, I said, my knee-jerk reaction is yes. Yes, it's worth it. But maybe not for the reason you think that it is. It's not for the title. It's not to wrap up my personality and my ego and being the CFO, right? It's because the job that I chose, the career that I chose, supported the things in my life that I am passionate about, right? I didn't grow up like, I can't wait to do debits and credits. It's gonna be like, oh, financial statements does it for me. No. But I wanted to put my kids through college. That was very important to me. My parents put me through college, and I wanted to put my children through college. And so the work that I did supported the things that I was passionate about. And I was very fortunate. I had a fabulous career. I worked with great leaders. And even the ones that weren't great, I learned from. I learned what not to do, right? And there's value in that. So yes, it's worth it.
Wherever you're at on your ladder, whatever ladder you're on, or maybe it's a step stool, maybe you've gotten off that ladder, it's worth it. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing your perspective. Love hearing what you have to say.
Yeah.